my favorite little book that I use for canning, because most of the time I don't have 45 pounds of tomatoes at one time. Actually, this time I do have nearly 9 pounds of jalapenos, but the best thing about this book is you can just multiply it out. And this book's really pretty. So, one of the best parts about this book, I would suggest it for anyone really, is it talks about canning basics. So it tells you the kind of jars to use, it tells you all the materials that you need, it tells you step by step how to do this. So I would suggest getting this book or any of the Ball canning books. They're really good too. This one just has some fun recipes. The recipe that we're going to use is the pickled jalapeno slices. We'll kind of look over it. It requires about 1 pound of jalapenos, 1.5 cups of white vinegar, teaspoon of canning and pickling salt, 4 large garlic cloves. I actually just use minced garlic or whatever I have. And then it calls for bay leaves. We don't use the bay leaves because my husband doesn't like the taste. But all of this only makes 4 half-pint jars. So 1 pound of jalapenos equals 4 half-pint jars. So I've got like a little over 8 pounds of jalapenos. So I'm gonna have to do some calculating, figure out how many jars. I also don't like to use the little half-pint jars because we like to use the bigger jars, or else it'll take me forever to get this done. So let's go ahead and read through here. It tells you to sterilize the jars. Okay, so it talks about sterilizing jars. You're gonna need a pot. I'll go into this a little bit later, but this is gonna be the main thing that you need. A pot that's big enough to hold your jars with a couple of inches of water, at least an inch of water over the top of the jars when you're processing it. This is just a big old pot that I have, but you can use any pot, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's see what else it talks about. So we're gonna need to, oh yeah. So you're gonna wanna put your jars in here, make sure they're clean, fill with water over about 1 inch over the top of the jars, and then I add a little glug of vinegar because that will get rid of the lime scale, which is the dusty kind of covering that's on glass. So I'll do that, put the jars in and get them boiling. They'll need to boil for 10 minutes, and that will sterilize them. Let's see here. Yes, important, put on gloves. So here's the part they don't tell you. This one thing kind of annoys me here. It says to combine vinegar, salt, and 1.5 cups of water. So however much vinegar you're using, that's how much water you're going to combine as well. So if you're going to double, triple, quadruple this, just make sure that it's equal amounts of vinegar and water. Don't forget this, or it's going to be taste really terrible. And then put it in a saucepan and bring it to boil. So I've got my little pan over here. We'll bring it to boil and we'll get started. One thing I forgot to tell you, you can use any pot. You do not have to have a special water bath canning pot. Any pot will do. However, you cannot put your jars directly on the bottom of the pot. They will break. So I don't know if you can see. I don't think you can see inside this one because it's rolling, boiling. But there is a metal, I can't see it. There's a metal framework that's inside of there that lifts the jars off the bottom. You can also get like a little rubber one at, here, let me show you what it looks like. Oh, sorry y'all, right here. You can get this little canning rack thing, and it comes around and hooks together, and you can get a couple of them if you have a big pot. I really like these because they're rubber and they don't corrode. The metal one sometimes corrodes, especially when you use vinegar. So just keep that in mind. You can use a pot you already have. You need some way to lift it off the bottom. One thing I did see that you could do, this looked pretty handy, is take your lids, and you can put your lids like this on the bottom of your pot, and then set your jars on top of the lids, and that will raise it up off the bottom enough that your jars won't break. First thing you're going to want to do is wash your jalapenos and then weigh them. If you picked them from the garden. If you bought them at the store, you may already know how much they weigh. Then we're going to slice off the tops and slice the jalapenos into about 1/4 inch slices, maybe a little less. Also, you're going to want gloves for this one. My water with my jars is boiling. I've got my pot out. Some other things we're going to need. Got my jalapenos sliced. That's what about 8 pounds of jalapenos sliced looks like. You're going to need regular white vinegar. You do not have to buy the expensive stuff in the canning section. You can just get regular old white vinegar. Canning pickling salt, regular salt will work, but the canning and pickling salt does not have iodine in it, so I would use that. You're also going to need some garlic. Also, some important things for canning that you're definitely going to need. This is a jar lifter. Do not try to use tongs. It will not work. Invest in a jar lifter. Also, one of these, it helps you to not make a mess all over your jars. And then a knife or something to kind of get the air bubbles out. Also, they make, the best thing to do is just buy a little kit. You can get a kit with this, and then there's a jar lifter or a lid lifter. It looks like a pencil with a magnet on the bottom, but I let mine get too close to the fire and burned and melted it. So I have to use tongs. Anyway, we are going to go ahead and get our vinegar and salt mixture going. So let's take a look here at the recipe. Let's see, it says 1.5 cups of white vinegar and a teaspoon of canning and pickling salt makes 4 half-pint jars. So you're going to want to go ahead and do some calculations to see how much of this you're going to need. I have 8 pounds, so I'm going to go ahead and, let's see, I need to see what kind of jars I have. I think I'm only going to do about half that. So I'm going to do some calculations and get back to you. We've got our water boiling. It has our salt and vinegar in it. Our jars are ready to go. We are all ready to rock and roll. So what we're going to do is take one of our jars out of the water bath. And what you're going to want to do is use a little bit of this water and pour it into a pan for it to simmer. And you'll use your lids. They need to be simmered to soften up the rubber a little bit. So we'll go ahead and get those in there, get them on simmer. Our water mixture's going. So we've got our jar. First thing we're going to do is take some garlic. If you follow the recipe, you can use cloves. I'm just using minced garlic because it's what I have. Putting about 1/2 teaspoon in there. Then I'm going to pack it full of jalapenos. And by pack it, I mean really pack it. Cram it down in there as tight as you can. Shove it in there. You're going to want these packed tight because you don't want a bunch of water. You want jalapenos. I've got them crammed in there pretty good. Then I'm going to take, you can take a ladle, measuring cup, whatever. Pour over your jalapenos. This should be boiling. And it should come to about 1/4 inch of the top of the jar. Then we'll take a knife or another utensil, go down the sides and press towards the middle. What this is doing is releasing any air that might be caught in the jalapenos and releasing it and bringing it up. And then I just kind of squish these jalapenos back down. That looks good. You'll need a wet paper towel. You want to wipe around the lid because you don't want anything on this lid. We want a good seal. Then we'll grab one of our lids here that's been simmering. Put it on the top. Fingertip tighten this. All right, and there we go. Put it in our water bath canner. And keep repeating till your jalapenos are done. I'll catch you just a minute, show you how long to do this for. All right, I've got all my jars here in my water bath canner. It is still hot, but not boiling anymore. So what we're gonna do is put the lid on. I usually leave it just a little bit over because once it starts boiling, it's gonna make a mess. Let's see, I've got it on medium. I'm gonna turn it up to high. And once this starts boiling, you're going to want to set a timer. And here in Brady area, we are at about 1,700 feet above sea level. So if you're, if it says, let's look here. It says process jars 10 minutes. However, we are more than 1,000 feet above sea level, so we'll need to add another 5 minutes to that. So you're going to want to boil for 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and let it boil, and I'll bring you back as soon as it's done. Okay, the timer's gone off, so now it's time to take these out. You're going to want to take them one at a time, and get the water off of them. This one looks gross because it has a label on the outside. And you're going to want to set them on a towel or something, not directly on your countertop. You're going to want some kind of a layer between the hot jars and your countertop. So we'll just take each one of these out. Be careful not to whack them into anything. Put them at least an inch or so apart so there's room for the air to circulate around them. Now do not touch these for 12 to 24 hours. They're going to want to be completely cool before you touch them. And you can see here on the top, I don't know if you can tell, but the lids are rounded right now. And here in a few minutes, you'll hear them pop, and this center button here will pop down. If it does not pop, take that jar, put it in the refrigerator, and use it up as soon as you can. Any jar that the center has not popped down, you're going to want to use those quickly and put them in the refrigerator. Also, don't mess with the lids, don't mess with anything for 12 to 24 hours. And when they're done and they're cool, the lids have all popped, you're going to want to take this outer ring off and put them in your cabinet. That outer ring will, if you leave it on, sometimes it can keep the lid down when in reality it should have popped up. And if you ever find a jar with a lid that is popped up or that center has popped up, dispose of it. Do not eat it. All right, thanks you guys. I'll talk to you later. Have fun.